Oh my God, I'm still shaking just thinking about this. This isn't some campfire story. This actually happened to me just a few weeks ago. I don't think I'll ever forget the feeling of that cold, paralyzing fear. I'm 20 years old and I finally made the leap, moved into this tiny 3-story complex a little ways from my parents. This was it, true independence. I'd never lived on my own, so everything felt huge, a huge accomplishment, and honestly, a little overwhelming. The only unit available was on the top floor, the 3rd floor. I loved the privacy, the sense of being above it all. I finally got all my boxes inside and just needed a moment. It was late, maybe 10 p.m., and I needed to eat before setting up my mattress. The only thing I could manage was a packet of instant noodles. I was waiting for the water to boil, that low, comforting rumble on the stove, when I heard it. A soft, deliberate creak right outside my apartment door. My heart instantly jumped. Was it the building settling? Or someone at the door? I had to know. I opened the door just a crack. "Hello?" I whispered. There was an older man, maybe 60, standing a few feet away, his back to me, facing the door directly across the hall, the neighboring apartment. I assumed he was the resident. A few seconds felt like an hour. Then he turned, slowly. He just looked at me for a moment, and then offered a barely audible, "My mistake, so sorry." Then he just walked past the neighbor's door and started descending the stairs. I shut my door and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. I realized something was desperately wrong. He didn't go into the neighboring apartment. Why would anyone walk all the way up to the 3rd floor, creep along the hall, stand by my door, only to walk back down if they didn't live up here? I tried to shake it off. Don't be paranoid, it's your first night. I ate my dinner, set up my bed, and finally, with a forced sense of calm, turned off all the lights. I eventually drifted off. I think it was around midnight. I woke up with a jolt, not knowing why, until I saw the clock, 1:29 a.m. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Not shuffling, but a distinct, heavy thump, 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 coming from the apartment directly below mine. Like someone was moving something massive or pacing with a terrifying urgency. I froze, listening. Then the sound stopped, and a moment later, I heard that familiar, bone-chilling floorboard creak just outside my door on the 3rd floor again. Panic flooded my entire body. Did I lock it? Please tell me I locked the door. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then the silence was shattered by a soft, metallic click, click, click. The sound of the door handle slowly, carefully being tested. It was locked. It was locked. He paused. The silence was deafening. Then I heard the faint sound of the neighbor's door opening and quietly closing. A wave of relief so strong it was dizzying washed over me. He must have just been trying the wrong door again, right? I finally fell back asleep, exhausted and relieved. Morning came with a loud, aggressive knock. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing there. They asked if I had seen or heard anything unusual last night, or if anything had been stolen. They told me that man had robbed 2 apartments on the 2nd and 1st floors. The victims had all done the same thing, forgotten to lock their doors. But then the officer said something that made the blood drain from my face. He said the man wasn't a resident. He was only ever seen walking up the stairs, never down. They didn't find him. He was a predator, moving from floor to floor, testing every single handle. I told them about the old man, about the door handle clicking, and I realized the horrifying truth. He wasn't confused about which door was his. He was trying to figure out which doors were unlocked. And when he heard my door was locked, he tried the neighbor's door, and that neighbor must have left theirs open. Just thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't double-checked that lock, I still can't breathe when I think about it.
When I was maybe 10, nearly 11, that age where the world still feels enormous and mysterious, my house sat right on the frayed edge of civilization. Picture this, a quiet, barely trafficked neighborhood road that dead-ended right into a massive, unforgiving forest. That forest was our playground. Me and my friends, we'd spend endless hours running wild, exploring, and breathing in that earthy scent. But even then I knew this wasn't like other woods. It was ridiculously dense. I mean, the trees were so choked together, it felt like the forest itself was squeezing you out. You couldn't walk side by side. You were constantly having to duck and weave, apologizing just to get past a tangle of trunks. It felt ancient. It was a perfectly ordinary Friday night. No school tomorrow, so my best friend, Ethan, came over to hang out. By the time he arrived, the sun was just beginning to bleed orange and purple into the sky. We had that urgent teenage need to get into the woods one last time before the dark really swallowed everything. We grabbed the thickest, heaviest utility flashlights my dad owned, just in case, and plunged into the trees. We walked for maybe 15 minutes, far enough for the neighborhood sounds to vanish, before we found a spot. A huge, moss-covered, fallen oak, perfect for sitting. That was our ritual, just sitting, letting the silence settle, and talking about everything and nothing. I truly don't know how long we were there. We got lost in a deep conversation, the kind that only happens when you're 10 and the world is all potential. But then I finally looked up, and the forest wasn't just dark. It was a deep, smothering, pitch-black void. We weren't immediately scared. We knew the woods, right? We just flipped on our flashlights, two narrow, frantic beams slicing the darkness, and started heading back. But I'll confess, a cold knot started twisting in my stomach. The silence was absolute, broken only by the loud, brittle crunch of our sneakers on the dried leaves, and we could barely see anything beyond the flashlight's immediate glow. The trees, those towering, silent giants, felt closer now, almost menacing. Then, after only a minute or two of walking, we froze. We both heard it. The unmistakable, slow, deliberate sound of someone or something walking just ahead of us. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. It was too measured to be an animal. It was a heavy, rhythmic footfall, maybe 15 feet away, hidden by the relentless density of the pines. Who would be out here, this deep, on a Friday night? I tried to breathe, to rationalize, but the air felt thin and cold. Just as the sound seemed to be slowly receding, pulling further into the darkness, it stopped. We both looked at each other. His eyes were wide, reflecting the frantic beam of his light. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every single sound, even the buzzing in my ears, seemed to vanish. As I stood there, utterly paralyzed, a terrifying wave of certainty washed over me. Immediate danger. And in that split second, I heard it. Not ahead, not beside us, but a soft, horrifying shuffle of leaves just a few feet directly behind us. My instincts screamed. I didn't think. I just ran. Straight, blind, full throttle through the trees, my shoulders constantly slamming into rough bark. I barely kept my feet. I could hear the crunch of leaves behind me again, but now it was frantic, a rattling chase. I prayed, I begged the universe it was Ethan, but the sound was too heavy, too relentless. And then the new twist, a sudden, violent crash to my right, followed by a strange, choked sound, and the sound of the pursuit behind me veering off sharply into the deep woods. That sound made me 10 times more terrified. It wasn't my friend. And where was Ethan? I ran harder, fueled by pure, primal panic and the sickening realization that I had left him alone. I finally burst through the last line of trees, gasping, collapsing into my own backyard. I stumbled inside, locking the back door with trembling hands, and then immediately went to the window. Minutes dragged by, each one a sharp, agonizing stab of guilt. My parents came downstairs, drawn to the frantic, panicked look etched on my face. As I was incoherently trying to describe the silent watcher and the sound of the chase, the doorbell rang. My dad, with a face white as bone, slowly cracked the front door open. Ethan practically shoved the door open and flew inside, trembling, tears streaming down his face. "They took a turn, man. They went after you, but then they split," he cried, breathless. He explained that after I bolted, he stood there, frozen solid. He said he heard 2 distinct sets of footsteps peel off the path and start chasing me. But then, after they vanished, he heard another, a soft, 3rd footfall approaching him slowly from the opposite direction. He waited until that sound passed, and then he ran. My parents called the police, but of course, nothing came of it. No tracks, no witnesses, nothing. Ethan and I, we still talk about it. To this day, we have this one terrifying theory that the person ahead of us was a lure, and the one behind us was the real hunter. And when I ran, they diverged, one to chase me and one to keep an eye on Ethan. A part of me wishes I had looked back, but another part knows deep down that in a forest that dense, with someone like that behind me, I would have been swallowed by the darkness forever. That night remains the single most terrifying, stomach-turning experience of my life. And I still can't look at a dark forest without feeling that cold knot of unease and dread settle deep in my chest.
It was a Friday night, not a Saturday, and the air was buzzing with that restless energy only a group of friends can conjure. We, my best friend Chloe and I, were practically vibrating, getting ready to catch the first set of this incredible small-time band at a downtown club. We were already running late, a classic move, and I was frantically throwing my essentials together, my car keys, my wallet, but I could not find my phone. "Forget it," Chloe yelled from the door. "We'll be late. Just grab your bag and let's go." And like an idiot, I listened. We flew out the door, the adrenaline of missing the start of the show overriding any other thought. We made it just in time, and the music was fantastic. Hours blurred with the laughter and the noise. Then I reached for my back pocket, and my heart just stopped. Empty. The icy dread hit me instantly. I checked every pocket, every corner of my bag, asking Chloe, "Did you see it? Please tell me you saw it." We retraced our steps through the chaotic, dimly lit club, even crawling under tables, but nothing. Defeated and honestly a little angry that someone had probably snatched it, Chloe pulled out her phone. "Okay, let's just call it. Maybe a bartender picked it up." She hit dial. It rang once, then a second time, and then it answered. "Hello?" I whispered, my voice thick with relief and irritation. Silence. Not the silence of a dead line. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. We could hear it, a soft, wet, labored breathing on the other end. Not a thief trying to hustle us, something else. It sounded too close, too slow. "Who is this?" I pressed, my relief dissolving into pure, shaking fear. I started to speak again, to demand an answer, but before I could utter another word, The line went dead. The click was sharp. Final. We left shortly after, the fun of the night completely ruined. I dropped Chloe off, but the drive back to my own house felt like it took days. Every shadow was a menace. Every rustle of leaves was a footstep. My mind was racing, trying to pinpoint the last place I had seen the phone. And then the terrifying thought slammed into me. I hadn't had it at the club. I hadn't even had it in the car. The last vivid memory was seeing it, glowing faintly, sitting right on my nightstand when I was rushing to change. I pulled into the driveway. My hands were visibly shaking as I put the key in the lock. I pushed the door open, not cautiously, but with a sudden, desperate surge of courage. I walked directly to my bedroom. I didn't want to turn on the light, but I had to. I flipped the switch, and there it was, sitting exactly where I had remembered leaving it, on the polished wood of my nightstand, utterly untouched. I didn't search the house for a broken window or a forced door. I didn't care about that. I just sank onto the bed, staring at the phone. It was here. It was safe. But if it was here, then who answered the call? And that's the thing that still keeps me awake at night. I didn't call the police. Who would believe that? A lost phone that wasn't lost, and an empty answer with heavy breathing. But sometimes, when I'm alone in the dead of night, I think about that breath. It wasn't the sound of the robber. It was the sound of someone or something very, very close. Something that answered my phone from inside my house right after I had left. And I wonder if it was waiting for me to call back just so it could finally speak.